Number 1, to warm us up, let's just go over all the various places we see this chapter that you might not have recognised, starting with Logetown, Fishman Island, Sky Pier, Sphinx Island, Water 7, Germa Kingdom, Weatheria, which was the Sky Island in which Nami had spent the time skip, Sabaudi, assumedly Fullerled based on the abundance of pirates in the following panel, the Red Force, Empty Bluffs, and New Marineford, formerly G1. Okay, now we can get into the real juicy stuff. Number 2. It's very interesting to me that as Vegapunk talks about the ancient weapons, he first shows Shirahoshi, a confirmed ancient weapon, and then Vivi side by side. Many have theorized for a while that Vivi is an ancient weapon alongside Shirahoshi, specifically Uranus or the person with control over Uranus, or however you want to call it, and this seemingly further boosts that theory. Oda then showing us the Sky Island of Sky Pier right after may indicate that Sky Pier 2 has something to do with the third ancient weapon, or more likely in my opinion, that Oda is creating a link between Vivi, who is potentially associated in some way with Uranus, and Sky Pier itself. Many have also theorized for some time that the power of Uranus involves controlling the weather, based on Uranus in Greek mythology being the embodiment of the sky, and this theory has only been further backed up in recent sections of the story, with Oda heavily hinting that Uranus was the ancient weapon used to destroy Lelucia, as I mean it can't be Poseidon or Pluton, and that was similarly a giant mass of cloud raining lightning down from above, nearly identical to Enel's Death Pier, which we saw in Sky Pier. Definitely a lot to think about. Number 3. Oda shows Whitebeard alongside Kuma, King, and Pudding as Vegapunk's message talks about the persecuted rare races of the world, such as buccaneers like Kuma, who Whitebeard is here depicted beside, potentially adding to the theory that Whitebeard is also a buccaneer, based on his and Kuma's similarly giant size, their extremely similar designs as children, Whitebeard speaking of old legends of gods from the Void Century that he heard as a child, which lines up very well with old stories of Nika being core to buccaneer legend, and so on. Sure, the surface level interpretation of this is that Oda was just showing Whitebeard talking about gods atop the red line as a way to lead into King, but it's not like we didn't already know King was a Lunarian. In my opinion, it's likely that Whitebeard's inclusion on this page potentially doubles as a hint towards him being a buccaneer. Keeping on this page for a bit, number 4. It's interesting that Oda shows that Marco is still here at Sphinx Island, despite the fact that last time we saw him, he and Buckin were planning to go after Vegapunk to prove that Weevil is Whitebeard's son, and in universe, that was an entire day ago. While it's true that we don't see Buckin in this panel, she could have gone off on her own, however, that's unlikely to me, considering Lilith is the only Vegapunk left for Marco and Buckin to realistically get to talk to, considering York is now with the Celestial Dragons and all the rest are dead, and Lilith is currently travelling with the Straw Hats. It's likely that Marco and Buckin are simply going to head off post-Egghead to wherever the Straw Hats are, i.e. Elbaf, in order to talk to Lilith. Number 5. King is alive, and all bandaged up, like he's been cared for. The last time we saw him was him getting bullied by Green Bull in the ruins of Udon Mine. I personally think that it's likely that he and the other beast pirates with King in the scene were arrested by Green Bull and sent to Impel Down. Considering it's not like Green Bull would have just let them go, we know there were marine ships outside Wano, and right after his stay at Wano, Green Bull also captured and arrested Weevil on board a marine ship, to be taken to Impel Down. This combined with the fact that getting captured and sent to Impel Down is tradition for defeated pirate crews at the end of an arc, namely Baroque Works in Alabasta or the Don Quixote pirates in Dressrosa, and it seems pretty likely to me. Therefore, assumedly the people who bandaged King up were Marines. As to whether King is currently in Impel Down here, I don't know. It has been 7 days since King was captured if you add up the single day between Green Bull's arrival on Wano and the crew leaving Wano, and the further 6 days it's been since the crew left Wano. Considering it's taken the Straw Hats multiple weeks at this point to travel from the start of the New World till Wano, as well as the fact that the prison ship holding King and likely also Weevil would then have to go through the Red Line to get to Impel Down in Paradise, I think it's more likely that King here is either still on a marine ship or in one of those temporary jails like Crocodile was in before he got sent to Impel Down in his cover story. Also, the fact that King is shown right after Marco on Sphinx Island may potentially count as further evidence for King and Weevil now being together, and King being shown right beside Pudding, who is currently aboard a ship, who is currently arrested aboard a ship. And King being shown right beside Pudding, who is currently imprisoned aboard a ship, may potentially count as further evidence that King is currently imprisoned aboard a ship. Number 6. It's interesting to me that Bonnie can be so overtly sad and emotional while in her Nika transformation. See, for a while I've had this theory that seeing as Gear 5 and Nika is all about freedom and fun and so on, that if Luffy is too sad or emotional or angry, he wouldn't be able to get into Gear 5. This would potentially allow for future fights, namely those with Blackbeard or especially Akainu, which necessitate a huge degree of emotional weight to not just be ruined by the silliness of Gear 5. If Luffy is too disheartened over Blackbeard killing Shanks or Akainu killing Ace, then he may not be able to turn into Gear 5, problem solved. However, Bonnie here may potentially disprove that theory, or it could simply be that Bonnie is allowed to be emotional while in Gear 5 because hers isn't truly Gear 5 but rather a distorted future of the Age fruit, something to note in my opinion. Number 7. We see Kizaru's reaction for the first time since the broadcast began, still lying on the floor. This is fine, Kizaru's served his role in the arc and it's entirely in character. However, I am a little disappointed with the lack of Admiral reactions to Vegapunk's broadcast, and by Admirals I mean the three of Kizaru, Fujitora, and Green Bull. These are probably the characters that I was the most curious to see their reactions to the message, and so far we've only gotten one ... panel from one of them, and nothing from the other two. If Vegapunk's message ends up continuing beyond this chapter, I hope we get Fujitora's and particularly Green Bull's reactions. I want to see how Vegapunk's broadcast potentially challenges their faith in the world government and so on. Here's hoping. Number 8. This is one of the biggest things from this chapter that most people seem to have missed. Vegapunk's message is already starting to go out. Already we're seeing syllables being cut out by the bzz interference as the Gorosei slowly whittle down the Iron Giant. In my opinion, this is almost certainly leading to this broadcast ending with it being cut out just before Vegapunk is able to give some final big reveal, and in my opinion, this reveal will be, or would have been, the name of the Ancient Kingdom, thus giving a further parallel to Ohara. It's been said multiple times throughout the arc that Vegapunk plans to finish what Clover started, and we know that everything Clover knew about the Void Century, Vegapunk also knows. In my opinion, the broadcast cutting off before the Ancient Kingdom's name can be revealed to the world is nearly guaranteed, and if so, it makes me curious as to what this name could be if it's so important that Oda has to hype it up in this way twice. Number 9. Saturn is last seen this chapter being punched into the water. This is huge because it likely means that next chapter we will get a definitive answer to the long-standing debate as to whether or not the Gorosei are Devil Fruit users based on whether or not Saturn drowns. However, the easy solution to this would simply be to have Saturn summon a portal to escape. Now, you could say that Saturn summoning a portal would itself be evidence that Saturn isn't a Devil Fruit user, as he'd be using his supposed Devil Fruit power underwater. However, I have two counters to that. Firstly, Zoan users have consistently been shown to retain a bit more of their power underwater than the other types. For instance, Bonnie, a Paramecia user, is completely reverted to her default child form while underwater. Meanwhile, Chopper underwater doesn't simply turn back to a normal reindeer, and Luffy underwater is still able to stretch. In my opinion, this likely has something to do with Zoans supposedly having wills of their own, and thus being able to better stand up to the sea's effects. Therefore, if Saturn is a Zoan, then he may still potentially be able to summon portals using his Devil Fruit. Number 2. I actually believe that this portal ability is Imu's, not Saturn's. This is why Saturn and all the Gorosei have to mentally convene and talk about summoning the portals as a ritual, in my opinion because they're asking for Imu's assistance. Otherwise what, all 5 Gorosei just happen to share the exact same portal ability despite the fact that this ability of a very Christian-themed demonic summoning circle doesn't really match with the yokai/sandworm that the Gorosei are? Yeah. Number 10. As Vegapunk talks about there being no guarantee the One Piece would be found by someone Joy Boy would want, Oda immediately cuts to fuller lead with people talking about Blackbeard, heavily implying that Blackbeard is a man Joy Boy wouldn't want to find the One Piece, continuing what Whitebeard told Teach in his dying moments at Marineford. The fact it then immediately pans to Shanks, someone who's had a history of worrying over and wanting to stop Blackbeard, to me further adds towards an idea that's been slowly built up over the course of the story, which is that of Shanks essentially being a gatekeeper to the next Pirate King. Someone who wishes to raise Luffy into that role, someone who Joy Boy would assumedly want, while attempting to keep out those who Joy Boy wouldn't want to become Pirate King, such as Blackbeard. This may potentially tell us a bit about what the conversation between Roger and Shanks was that we saw in chapter 968. Did Roger tell Shanks that this was his role from here on? Is that why Shanks cried? It's possible. Number 11. On a similar note, it's interesting to me that both Shanks and Rayleigh have consistently been depicted drinking throughout the entirety of this message, and there are numerous interpretations for what Oda is trying to say here. Maybe they're just drinking in memory of Roger. Maybe they're coping to drink. Maybe they're drinking to cope with the stress of whatever Vegapunk could potentially reveal next, considering there seems to be a concerted effort among people such as Rayleigh and potentially Shanks to not let the rest of the world know information from the true history before the time is right. Maybe it's a hint to the One Piece potentially being Bink Sake, a long-running theory, as the two people who know, or at least partially seem to know, the Void history indulge in sake as Vegapunk recounts parts of it to the rest of the world. It's definitely an intentional pattern Oda's setting up. Number 12. It's noted that Blackbeard still hasn't returned to Fuller Lead, with the implication that he should have been back by now, inviting the question as to what's holding him up. In my opinion, a potential answer is that Blackbeard is intentionally avoiding returning to Kuzan after suspecting that Kuzan may be a secret member of SWORD. It could also be that Blackbeard has already gone to either Wano or Fishman Island to collect ancient weapons, based on information he may have just heard from Caribou, who could potentially have been teleported back with Van Orga to Winter Island, as Van Orga was previously seen fighting Law at Winter Island alongside Blackbeard, and thus he would know where Blackbeard is. Number 13. Last time we saw Empty Bluffs, 3 Seraphim, S Flamingo, S Crocodile, and S Gecko had been sent to deal with them. Now these Seraphims are nowhere in sight. What happened to them, and will we ever see it? I hope Oda shows us some point soon. Number 14. Vegapunk announces that the fate of this world will be decided by whoever finds the One Piece. In my opinion, this all but confirms an idea that has been around for years in the community, and which Vegapunk's speech has slowly been building up to, that the full story of the Void Century released by the Straw Hats when they inevitably make it to Laugh Tale will be what incites the worldwide revolution against the world government, not Vegapunk's broadcast, which I personally much prefer. And finally, number 15, the thing you've all been waiting for, the silhouette at the end. I'm not going to drag this out any longer than it needs to be. In my opinion, this is Shanks' brother or cousin or whatever, which I believe based on the similar appearance between him and Shanks, such as the similar cape, the identical sword, even the face shape, as well as the fact that it would make for a nice pattern with essentially each set of 4 on this page containing a garland. I also believe this character, Shanks' brother, to be a God's Knight, the same God's Knight that was shown in silhouette when Dragon first brought up the God's Knights based on the similar appearance between the two. No, I do not believe that we have ever seen this character before. I don't believe that they were the person that talked to the Gorosei in chapter 907, or anything like that. For one, why would the Gorosei say this supposed evil twin of Shanks should have nothing to do with politics if they were, a celestial dragon and a high-ranking one at that? Overall, I think Oda is simply setting up a similar thing between Garling, Shanks, and this brother character as he did with Homing, Rocinante, and Doflamingo respectively. That being a celestial dragon father and his 2 sons, at least one of whom left the celestial dragons at a very early age, and due to the pair's wildly different upbringings, they grew up to be complete opposites, referring back to the whole nature versus nurture idea that has been a running theme throughout One Piece. Number 16, Oda drew Emu's eyebrow.